Coming up on our next installment of America's Hope, we focus on the Florida Freedom Summit. It happened over the weekend, focusing on presidential candidates on the Republican side, vying for the attention to get people to think of them as being the next leader of the free world. That's next on America's Hope. Good evening, I'm Kelly Wright, and this is America's Hope. Tonight we're going to focus on an event that took place on Saturday in Kissimmee, Florida. It was called and known as the Florida Freedom Summit, where Republican presidential candidates gathered to speak to more than 1,500 people who gathered to hear what they had to say and why they should consider that particular candidate to become the next president of the United States. Bear in mind, we are now a year away from the presidential election. This next year, we will meet and greet a lot of different people throughout the United States who are watching the events very closely to figure out who their choice will be to become president of the United States. So let's zero in now to Kissimmee, Florida, to show you a few of the candidates as we talk to them about what they're hoping to do. And that, of course, is to become the commander-in-chief of these United States. Let's get started.
I'm pleased to report that just moments ago, I officially filed to appear on the ballot in the Florida Republican primary. So we'll see. Which I'm also happy to report that we're leading by about 75 points. So that's. And with your help, we are going to win the Florida primary for the third straight time. We're going to win the state in a landslide next November, just like we've done twice.
Florida has shown the way forward for the Republican Party. We show how it can be done to not only do good policy, but to do very good politically.
So joining me now, I'm in Florida, and I wanted to introduce you to the executive director of the Florida Republican Party. What's the purpose of today's event?
You know, we're here to celebrate freedom, and we're here to defend freedom, because that's what we believe is going to be on the ballot. And we have numerous Republican primary presidential candidates who aspire to be the Republican nominee going forward in 2024, who are coming here to talk about their vision, their hopes and aspirations for our country, which is really reflective of conservative values, because we know that it's under assault by the left and the Democrat Party. So we're very excited for this day, and thank you all for being here.
It's our pleasure. Helen, there's a lot going on in the world today. And as I said, I know you have to be brief because you've got a lot to do here. What's your hope for America?
We hope that America has an opportunity to defend the American dream, which is so important for all. It's what unites everyone. It's our values. It's what brings us all together. It's been alive for more than 230 odd years, and it's going to be alive for 230 odd more, but we have to fight for it. It's always just one generation away from extinction. And when you look and you see what's happening on college campuses today, when you see that our open borders has brought in millions of folks, some who are good people, but obviously broke the law by coming in here illegally.
Real quickly, what's your hope for America?
My hope for America is that we will revive the 1776 ideals we were founded on. That got us 250 years in. I think it's going to get us the next 250 years ahead if we can remember who we really are. So my number one wish right now is we rediscover who we are as Americans. I think we can. I think we're going to. That's why I'm leading us.
What is your hope for America?
Look, my hope for this country is prosperity for our country, a future for our kids where they can have a great education and safety and security both here and around the world. But that's going to take a lot of effort, and that's what we have to do.
Are you prepared to go the long haul, even if it's against the former President of the United States who is still leading in the polls?
Especially if it's against the former President of the United States.
Why?
Because he's unfit for the presidency. His character is beneath the job that the American people need done, given all the problems and challenges you just referred to. We need someone who puts the country first, not puts themselves first. And all he cares about is himself and getting himself out of all the criminal trouble he got himself in the first term, which I don't think he's going to be able to do.
So, Governor, to my point, my colleague Brian was talking about it earlier today. In the room, you heard hecklers, and even out here, you're hearing hecklers. What do you say to the people who do not have your best interests in their interests?
That's what democracy's all about. I mean, I don't know why anybody would be bothered by that and why you guys make such a big deal over it. You know, so the fact of the matter is that this is what you put up with in a democracy. There should be differing opinions where everybody gets to speak. And so I have no problem with what happened in there. They get to express their opinions, and I was up on the stage and got to express mine. With a few interruptions maybe, but I got to express them. And that's what this country is all about. So that's all good with me.
There are other people here, but real quickly, you worked with the former president for many, many years. You've known him for 22 years. What do you think he should be doing right now? Should he be on the campaign trail, campaigning with everybody just like you are?
He should be campaigning, asking for people's votes, rather than sitting in courtrooms defending himself. That's what he should be doing. So that's what it's all about. I mean, in the end of the day, this is all putting himself before putting the country. And that's just completely unacceptable to be a successful president. That's why his last presidency fell short. And I think that's why he won't be president again.
Welcome to America's Hope. I'd like to introduce a very important guest. He's running for president of the United States. He is Governor Asa Hutchinson, former governor of the great state of Arkansas. And Governor, every time I see you, you have this wonderful smile. And it seems to, in my opinion, from observation, show your inner resolve and your hope for America. Talk to me about that, please. What drives that smile in the midst of all this turmoil of running as for president?
Well, because I have a foundation in faith, and whenever you look at the words of Scripture that we could rejoice in all things, and so that source of joy is important to me. And whenever you look at the challenges that we face as a nation, they're serious challenges, but I have hope in an almighty God, and I believe in his providential care over the United States of America. So you pray, you hope, and you're joyful.
Amen to that, Governor, and it would be so important if more people stated that and believed that. But you actually state that on the campaign trail. How's it being received? Like, for example, here in Florida, you gave a speech and received a warm ovation from people. How did you feel about the fact that they're actually hearing you and sensing your message for America?
Well, that's what a campaign is about, and it's gratifying to me because people need encouragement, people need hope. And I think they see in the candidates that are presenting themselves on the Republican side, conservatism, but also hope and optimism for our future. You know, people want problems solved. They want leadership that, reflects faith, but also reflects the seriousness of our times. And so, in today's speech, obviously, I present my conservative record as governor, as head of the DEA, and in the Bush administration. And then I also present the passion I have for our future and how we need to have energy security, how we need to secure the border, and how we need to support Israel. And we need to slow the spending down from Washington, D.C. And so that's a conservative message that resonates, and then I give them hope for the future as well.
At the same time, what are your concerns about our present?
Well, and of course, I also talk about the fact that we're going to have challenges next year. I'm running for president on the Republican ticket, which means by definition, I'm running against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I think we have to have some serious reflection as to what's going to happen next year. We could be in a real box. And whenever you look at multiple trials, you're looking at challenges and court proceedings. This is just not good for the Republican Party, and we could pay a price for it for decades, no matter how it comes out. And also, it's about, I want a Republican president that has a Republican House and Senate. And I'm worried about the coattails or not coattails. And so this is a serious time, and I urge the Florida voters to think through all the issues and the chaos that could be surrounding March Madness and the March primaries. So they're going to know a lot more than voters will know in New Hampshire and Iowa because they come later. And, you know, I got booed a little bit. It's because there's a lot of Trump supporters
For the stance
here.
that you took, being
Yes.
against the former president.
Oh, yeah, you know, and I take it in the right spirit. I mean, they love my conservative leadership and my view of the future and my opposition to Joe Biden. But, you know, there's Trump supporters there. I respect that. That's what competition's about. But I had to make the case. People have to think about it, and that's why I laid it out.
What were your concerns about the Republican House right now under the new Speaker, Mike Johnson, who supports Donald Trump, believes that the election may have been stolen, and other factors that are there? I mean, I know you have followed all of this closely. Talk to me about your concerns about the Republican House and getting governing done.
Well, and for that reason, I'm delighted that we have a speaker that was unanimously selected, and he was a dark horse candidate, which I expected they would have to turn to, and he's a person of faith, person of prayer. These are all good things, and so let's give him a chance to succeed. Now, we have some disagreements on issues, but my goodness, let's be allies and friends, and I want him to be successful, and I think he's off to a good start.
Governor, how do we bring this country together? Right, left, conservative, liberal, black, white, you name it. We're so divided right now.
Well, it's hard, first of all. I mean, we did that in Arkansas, but the division in Washington, D.C. and across this country is much more serious. And so it all starts with leadership. And we've had times of division in our country throughout history. But we've also had leaders that rose above the division and said, how can we pull our country together? Regretfully, today we have leaders that make money on division. They further the divide. And so we've got to change that course. And that's what I hope to do, is to be a leader that can recognize differences, but just like Ronald Reagan had to work with Tip O'Neill because there's a Democrat Congress to get his economic package through. That's the reality that we face if we're in a divided government. So let's problem solve. Let's see where we can find some common ground and stand for our principles at the same time.
Bear with me just a little bit, because I want to get back into your past. You were head of the DEA. Right now we see young people dying at a high rate of fentanyl abuse. We know that drugs are out there. Where have we failed our youth in terms of the proliferation of drugs like fentanyl?
Well, our national attention has been diverted away from the challenge that we face with opioid abuse, with drug addiction, and educating our youth. And so we've got to reverse that. That's why I said today I will elevate our drug czar to a cabinet position so that everyone understands the Hutchinson administration is going to address the challenge that we face in opioid addiction and hit it head on. And so it's a matter of national attention and focus on it. Obviously, I want to strengthen the DEA to go after the supply chain, but it's also about education, awareness, counseling, and so both the drug addiction challenge and the mental health challenge. Whenever you look at the shooting in Lewistown, and it was someone who struggled mental health-wise and was identified as such, and not sufficient action was taken. This has to be addressed, and so I will have a mental health czar that will actually coordinate all of our grant funding and support for our local police in having to address the mental health crisis that we have.
How do you think President Biden is handling the situation with regard to Israel? And then what's your concerns when you see people protesting in the streets against Israel, in favor of Hamas?
Well, there's some things that President Biden has done right. He quickly said we support Israel. He was there himself personally. So hats off to him for that. Now, Where I disagree with him is that he is trying to tell Israel to engage in a ceasefire. We should not tell Israel to engage in a ceasefire. That undermines Israel, and the Hamas should release those hostages immediately before a ceasefire is ever considered. That's what they want to avoid, and they need to release those hostages. So I don't like what President Biden has done in that regard. In terms of our college campuses, our administrators and presidents need to speak out and say anti-Semitic behavior is not going to be tolerated on this campus. And they need to be clear from a moral standpoint that what Hamas did was intolerable and barbaric. Why are they hesitant to say those words? And that causes the students on campus to be soft, to cause them to support Hamas. And if there's somebody who is out of our country on a student visa going to our universities and they're out supporting Hamas, get them out of our country.
Final question, what's your hope for America?
My hope for America is that we'll have a leader that brings out the best of America. It's such a great country that we have, and we need to bring out the best of our freedoms, the best of our religious expression, the best of our military, and the best of our economy. And that's the hope I have for this country.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. There's one person who's been running for president, and he's doing it with his own unique way. He's running as a Republican, Dr. Roland Roberts. He joins us now on America's Hope. Dr. Roberts, it's good of you to join us again.
Great to be with you, Kelly.
We talked some time ago, I think it was June of this year, when you were discussing about running on a purpose of saying America needs God. Has that changed at all?
Not a single bit. In fact, if you look at world events, if anything, I think it's becoming more clear to the American people that where America is right now is beyond the help of politicians. It's beyond your policy. It's beyond the next think tank. What America needs is God more than ever. We need His blessing.
And so in running on that campaign, what have you been able to say to America on your campaign trails?
Well, that the family is the greatest threat and also the greatest blessing and our greatest strength to America. And so I'm running on national security, family, and economy.
When you look at the landscape of the candidates within the Republican Party, where do you see yourself standing in difference to them, and then even having some common ground with them?
Certainly. Well, first of all, there is no number two right now. I mean, you either have Trump and then you have everybody else.
Okay.
So there is no second place. I believe I'm running outside of that pack. It's one of the reasons why I didn't participate in the debates, because I felt like that was irrelevant. It's not the way to run this time in history for where America is at. We need to do things different. We have to do things better. We're talking about Gen Z. No one living has seen how Gen Z will affect a popular vote and for president of the United States. So to run the way things have always been, not to mention a World War III looming over our heads, and China and South China Sea and Iran and Israel and everything else, that alone changes the dynamic. But that's where I'm different. I'm not running the normal campaign because these aren't normal times. People need statesmen, not CEOs that know how to appease the governing bodies of either the Republicans or the Democrats.
Let's unpack that. You said a lot of things there. Generation Z. You see throughout America, people are protesting against Israel on college campuses. We see a rise in anti-Semitism. We see a rise in anti-Asian. We see more division. What's happening there, and how would you address that?
Well, it's a lot of indoctrination over the past couple decades while most Americans were sleeping. The problem is we've had it so comfortable, we've had it so easy, we've been focused on our retirement. And now I know politicians tell us how bad we have it, and if we don't vote for them, then we're going to lose our democracy. But the truth of the matter, and that has been the rhetoric from the last 20 years, but people still went to work the next day, they still went out to eat, they still took their annual vacation, and they didn't notice that. Yes, they may have taken a second job and things got tighter, but the issues today are so much greater, and we will have a profound lifestyle change in America if something doesn't change. the open border, all of the people coming in, what we're seeing around the world is child's play compared to what will happen in the United States if we don't get, not even if we get the border under control now, we also have to go back to what's already been done and fix who's already here.
So you're talking about the gotaways, the people who are coming in with a known terrorist behavior and perhaps trying to set up terror attacks on the United States, which we're now hearing the director of the FBI saying we have a problem.
Other governments have infiltrated us. Spycraft has been around, for centuries. What's different about this is that it wasn't just spycraft, it was a full-on invasion and an infiltration. And the interesting thing is, sometimes they're our neighbor. They're sitting next to us in coffee shops. As we saw from 9/11, they're at our flight schools. And then they go study at the coffee shop for their flight tests, and you would never know. They're already here. But the problem is, you can't let that affect your prejudice to other people. We're still Americans in the United States of America. It is our leader's responsibility to be held accountable for this. And that's why my plan for immigration, both for illegal immigration and for the people who are already here, is absolutely the best we've ever seen from either party.
If you were president today, what would you do about Israel and Ukraine?
Well, first of all, I'm one of the editors of Ukraine's new constitution.
Talk to me about that real quickly.
Sure. So they're moving from obviously a USSR, old Soviet model, which their current constitution was actually written in Moscow in 1994. That would be like the British writing our constitution in 1776. It's a little bit skewed, okay? And so we want to help promote a free society in Ukraine. Free Nation is doing a great job over there, laying the groundwork. They're getting the support of the Ukrainian citizens and of the government officials. I was just with the European Union, 6 ministers, ex-ministers from the Eastern Bloc nations in Ukraine last week for this, discussing the way forward. They want to have a free country, but freedom is messy. And they're learning that it requires a lot of conversation, such as children going to school. Well, if they want to if you want ultimate freedom, the parents get to decide if their children are educated or not educated. Here in the United States, we decided to relinquish that freedom, and the state does mandate school attendance for children.
And now Israel, the topic of that.
Israel has to defend itself. Israel, one of the biggest misconceptions I've seen about this whole thing, I knew when I did the interview on October 20th, 3 weeks prior to these attacks happening on November 7th, they were asking me about Iran as it relates to the United States and them being one of our greatest threats. I said, they're not our greatest threat. They're Israel's greatest threat. And that's where we need to be watching, because anything that happens to Israel, we're going to be drawn into that. And so I can tell you that all the countries within 24 hours lined up on one side or the other, whether you were Israel or Palestine. Palestine's not even a nation. So to even talk about them in that way shows the ignorance of the American public and really the world at large. Also, the other misconception I'm hearing is that they keep saying, well, the Israelites stole the land in 1948 whenever they took it. And ironically, they don't understand that this was promised to Abraham and to Isaac, and these are the children of Isaac and the children of Ishmael. They didn't take anybody's land. It was given to them, couple millenniums ago.
Going back to antiquity. So, Dr. Roberts, you've been running. Are you getting traction? Do people know who you are? And take this opportunity now to tell people who you are. Who is Roland Roberts?
Well, I can tell you, we like where the campaign is at. Obviously, Vice President Pence is out, Larry Elder's out, Perry Johnson's out. A lot of people have dropped out already, the candidates, and we're just getting started. We've been running every day for months, since the beginning of the year, January 20th. But at this point, we just have staff we hired last week. We have political consulting firms that are coming on. We have a super PAC that just got behind us. That's going to revolutionize our campaign and the landscape of it. Really, where the campaign is at is about getting our message out that America needs God. We have all the policies. It's on our website, RolandRoberts.com. We go over education and immigration and healthcare and concerns on the economy and the national debt, how to not balance the deficit, but to eliminate the national debt. What we're going to do on energy and nuclear energy and clean energy. What we're going to do on AI, artificial intelligence, and jobs of the future. That is where we are, and we can win on family, national security, and economy.
But who are you?
who I am. I'm a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ first and foremost. I'm a husband and a father. In fact, today's my son's 4-month birthday.
Congratulations.
4 months old. Yes, yeah. But that's who I am. I mean, the Lord is everything to me, and I build my life around what pleases Him and following the best I can. I believe God called me to run for president. This was not an aspiration. This was not something that I aspired to. This was God calling me to run for president of the United States at this time for such a time as this. What He does with it, it's whatever gives Him the most glory, and we're fine with that.
So you're running on a call from God. And so my final question is, what's your hope for America?
My hope is that people turn back to Him and acknowledge Him once again. He said, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. If we don't acknowledge Him, we are doomed. If we acknowledge Him, then so many of the problems in America that we experience, we would not experience. We're trying to solve them the wrong way, and we just have to acknowledge Him once again.
Dr. Roland Roberts, thank you for being on America's Hope.
It was a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
Thank
God
you,
bless
Kelly.
you. So some of the things that are going on in America today, many people are questioning what's going on with the young people in America. Well, I'm here in Florida. I just happened to have met a young man. Alex Corin joins me now on America's Hope. Alex, thanks for joining us. Now, let me get this straight. You're in the 10th grade?
10th grade, that's right.
And where are you from?
I'm from Broward County.
Broward County, Florida? So why are you here at this political event?
Well, I'm here because since I was 8 years old, I've always had a passion for politics. Ever since one day CNN came on and I saw Trump speaking with, actually, I think it was, who was it at the time? Against Jeb Bush, and he said, your shoes look like you're from the 1950s, and I thought that was hilarious. And on top of that, it really started when I saw Election Day. I was very interested in elections ever since I was 8 years old. I was interested in how they count the votes, how each state reports it by precinct, and I've always had a passion for helping the American people. I think that's number one. We need more bipartisanship. The far, far right and the far, far left, they have something in common. They're two clowns in the same suit.
So let me get that straight then. You say the far right and the far left are what?
Two clowns in the same suit.
Wow. Out of the mouths of a young man who's looking at America, and you're not even old enough to vote yet.
Not even old enough to vote. That's right. I can't vote until 2026.
Okay, and are you ready to do that?
I'm ready to do that. As a Jewish American, I feel proud to live in this country. This country has given me so much opportunity. My great-grandpa, my great-grandma, they fled the Holocaust. My great-grandma was an Olympic swimmer. She lived in Yugoslavia. Her and her husband were very fortunate to make it to the United States. And when they got here, they were living in a bad area, a very, very bad area. Guess what? They worked their way up, and they eventually lived the American dream in New York City and made their way. And for all the people who, live in bad areas, you can do it too. Everyone can live the American dream, but it matters on you. All these other factors, there's other factors that influence you. Do not fall into that. Do not get brainwashed by anyone. Do not allow anyone to tell you what to do. You decide your future for yourself. If you see people committing crime, if you see people acting bad, do the opposite. Do the right thing.
What are your concerns as a Jewish American about the rise that we've seen in anti-Semitism, as well as people protesting on the streets against Israel?
I think it's insane. I think you can't cure stupid and you can't cure mental illness. I think that's another issue that we have in this country. A lot of these people who believe that, it's because they're brainwashed by the teachers, right? Especially college kids. A lot of college kids, these woke teachers, these woke influencers, they say, right, they're casuals. They don't know much about history, right? All they know is that Israel exists and that Gaza and West Bank that there's a conflict. That's all they know.
So what do you want people in America's schools your age to understand about the future of America?
I think we need to support our allies, but I also think we need to have a good conservative culture.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you hope for your future?
My future is I hope that people can see each other as people. That's it.
And I'm speaking to Drianna Sixto, who is a representative of Turning Point Action.
Correct.
What does Turning Point Action do, Drianna, and in terms of getting political activity?
So we're trying to save the country by saving the Republican Party first. And the way we are doing that is by activating Republicans in their local communities. A lot of people don't know how else they can get involved other than going to vote on Election Day. And that is clearly not enough. We need to be involved year-round, even in years that aren't election years. So the number one function that we have is recruiting people to become precinct committeemen or precinct committee women.
Are you finding that young people are now taking an interest in the Republican Party and in politics itself?
I think absolutely, because the decisions that politicians have been making for us in the last few years have greatly affected younger Americans. And they find themselves unable to see a future where they accomplish the American dream, like our parents might have had the opportunity to do so, or our grandparents. People think that politics, is something they can avoid, but politics takes an interest in you. And I think that's why our generation is going to be, at the very least, a lot more fiscally conservative than what we previously imagined, because you can, have different social ideas, different social viewpoints, but your pocket is usually the first thing to get affected.
Yeah, it's true.
And so, yes, we see a lot more young people wanting to get involved. The issue is that they don't know how. They just think that getting involved is, showing up to a fun event or voting on election day, but they don't even know what the party structure looks like, right? From the top to the state level to the county level. Even myself, I've been in politics for a very long time, and I was mostly...
Wait, a long time? How old are you? I mean, I'm not going to ask your age,
it's
but
fine.
you're young.
I turned 30 in January,
Okay.
and for the better part of my 20s, I have been, on college campuses, on high school campuses, educating students on conservative values. But that is very different from educating people on how the country's political system works and how the party system works. It's a different transition,
It is,
right?
because what you're doing, you're giving a good civics lesson as well as a good political lesson, which we don't get in our schools
Yeah.
any longer. So let me ask you then, you were talking about being on college campuses. What's your concern when you look over the landscape of America right now with regard to how people have reacted to the war between Israel and Hamas and other issues?
It's absolutely crazy. I used to work for our sister organization, Turning Point USA. They're a 501c3 nonprofit, and they are on college campuses and high school campuses promoting conservative values and ideas. Right now I'm with the C4, which is the political side of things, but I was with the C3 for so long, and so I saw firsthand for many years how universities have allowed so many different students to create actual hate groups on campus, actually create groups that are pro-BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction, which is a movement that basically advocates for, the annihilation, the economic annihilation of Israel, and regardless of what your beliefs are, there is no justification for the complete annihilation of absolutely anybody, right?
Right.
It's insane.
I got to ask you a personal question.
Sure.
When were you born in America?
I was born here in
and
the
your
United
family,
States. I'm Cuban.
Cuban, okay.
Yes, I'm Cuban, and my dad, my mom, they were born in Cuba. My dad was a political prisoner in Cuba.
Wow.
And that is why after getting out of prison, he was able to apply for a visa as a refugee to come to this country legally. And that process takes a while. My parents were together, married in Cuba for almost an entire decade before being able to come to this country. And my sister and I were born here because my parents waited. They didn't want to have me and my sister in Cuba under a dictatorship. They waited a very long amount of time so they can come here legally, have us in this land of freedom, and that is why her and I, we grew up with very conservative beliefs, or at the very least knowing the dangers of communism, of socialism.
What's your hope for America?
My hope for the future is that more people wake up to this, and that as a result they get more involved in politics, not just on election day, but locally. If they are passionate enough, run for office at local positions and school board positions, commission positions, all of that. We want our people, our true conservatives, to start getting involved. I think that's happening.
Very good. Triana, thank you.
Thank you
for the
so much.
So I'm with a gentleman who is known throughout the Republican Party, is also known throughout the state of Florida, Manny Iglesias. You're joining us now, and I'm delighted to meet you. Our first time meeting, but in our conversation before coming on for the interview, I wanted to find out more about your background. And I think for our viewers, how did it all begin for you, your experience, your American experience?
My family came to the United States in 1961 from Cuba, and what brought us here was a desire for freedom and opportunity. And I think I've had a life that really exemplifies the American dream. In 1972, I volunteered for the Nixon campaign, and by August, I was working for the White House and was a field man, and was a National Hispanic Youth Coordinator for Nixon 72.
Wow.
It was just an incredible dream. Afterwards, I founded in 1973 the Hispanic American Young Republicans as an outreach to the Hispanic community, mostly the Mexican American community, to bring him into the Republican Party. And I've been active ever since.
So here you are, you come to a country and you actually adopt the country as your home, and you actually got involved. When you look at the landscape of young people in America today, do you see that same kind of care and concern being given about our country today and our future?
We've lost our children. We've lost our youth. I was in '84, I was the state Reagan-Bush youth chairman for the state of Florida. And I've been very active in youth politics up to that time nationally. And the Republican Party, the conservative movement, had the vast majority of the youth. For example, in '84, we won in Florida 70-30, by a 70-30 margin, the under 30 vote. That is the reverse now. Actually, it's worse than 70. We don't get 20% of the vote today in that category. And we won the high school straw polls in the state of Florida. I think the biggest threat to the United States is the NEA and the Chinese, Communist Chinese. And the NEA has taken over our educational system. We need to fight that war, regain control of our educational system, and stop the indoctrination of our children.
So let's talk about the erosion of what's happened then to our educational system and our children, and what danger that poses for America's future.
The left, the people who are anti-American, who have taken control of our educational system, have indoctrinated a whole generation of leaders in the United States. That's why you see the leadership of the top corporations that come from the best schools are basically extreme left part of this in the spectrum, and anti the American values that I think we've represented for the last since post World War II in terms of the world. They're anti-free enterprise. They're pro-collectivism. They're internationalists at the expense of the United States. And quite frankly, we have, I think what separated the United States from the rest of the world in the last century was we had the moral authority. We were that beacon on the hill. Even today, with all the perceived problems that we have internally, nobody wants to emigrate to Canada. Nobody wants to emigrate to Europe. Nobody wants to emigrate anywhere else. Everybody wants to come to the United States because we're still the symbol for the people that are desperate as the place to go and achieve freedom and opportunity.
Manny, what you're talking about is so important and actually so spot on about what we see in our youth. Are you concerned about what we've seen developing on college campuses in America and even high school campuses, not just with regard to Israel and Hamas and Palestinian protests, but even beyond that, just the very nature of how our children treat each other, the sense of violence that's going on right now as well?
There's been a big breakdown of the social compact in America over the last 20 years, and it's been over the last 20 years. I think the United States had a major shift since 2000. I think it's redeemable, and I think it starts with real good political leadership. What we have been doing for the last 40 years is funding our enemies at the educational level. We need to get rid, in my estimation, the Department of Education. We need to defund all the programs and all the organizations within the so-called scholastic system that are anti-American. We need to teach American values, and I think we're doing that in the state of Florida. I think Florida, for example, exemplifies as a state the Reagan dream, the Reagan Revolution. We have a tremendous governor, a tremendous legislature, and we're enacting the laws, and that's where we're opportunity state. People are emigrating to Florida because we represent the best of America.
And you were talking to me about the reason why that is because the state of Florida has actually adopted and followed the United States Constitution.
Absolutely.
Explain that to me a little bit more deeper.
Our founding fathers created a very good Constitution, but it wasn't in a vacuum. It was really looking at the excesses of the French Revolution. What the French Revolution did was decapitate the king and put government in the place of the king. So they capitated an absolute power in an individual and gave an absolute power to a government, which still happens today in Europe, in the European parliamentary system. The United States was different. We turned the political system upside down in terms of anything that had ever been seen before. We gave the individual the power. What has happened, and it's been tried before, but it has really accelerated in the last 20 years, especially with the last two Democratic administrations, is that they have tried to socialize our political process. They have tried to make everybody dependent on the federal government. So you lose individual rights, you lose the opportunity state, because at the end of the day, the biggest employer is the government. The best benefits are coming from the government, so the government dictates everything. We need to get back to basic American values where the government maybe still has a safety net, but it's to help those who need help, not become the driver of our economy, which is what is happening now in the same model as you have in Europe and other parts of the world.
How do we redeem our nation, not just politically, but even spiritually and mentally, when we know that we're having our adversary China and other adversaries within trying to even disrupt our moral compass?
It goes back to re-educating our children, the next generation. I think the battleground right now is in the schools. You saw what happened in Virginia when the parents got involved and engaged. I think you're seeing that movement nationally. I thought COVID was a tremendous boon to the United States because it did two things. It showed the parents what the children were being indoctrinated or taught in the schools, and there's been a national reaction. We need to get control of our educational system, and it also unearthed the fact that China was in control of our supply chain in not only basic issues, but also things that were of military value. So I think that we know what we have to do. We now have to implement it, but it's implemented on the political level, one state house at a time, one governor at a time, one senator at a time, and hopefully recapture the White House in 2024.
Well, my final question is, for the moment now, is what's your hope for America?
To recapture the expectations that we had after the 1980 election with Ronald Reagan. We are the beacon on the hill. We are the country of opportunity. We are the country of individual freedoms. And we're the only country that encompasses those assets or those attributes. If we're lost, there is no hope for humanity in terms of individual rights, democracy in the rest of the world.
And that's a prayer I hope God answers, my friend. Manny Iglesias, thank you for being on America's Hope.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And welcome back to America's Hope. My final word for tonight is that we've seen from the Florida Freedom Summit various candidates talking about why they believe they are the best candidate to become president of the United States. But we've also seen through the observation of people living in the Sunshine State of Florida that they, like all Americans, are very concerned about the future of this country. And the bottom line is, as one person told me, freedom ain't free. It has to be protected and guarded. And beyond the Freedom Summit in Florida, we must focus on providing hope to America in order to safeguard this precious freedom that gives us this great country called the United States of America. Until next time, good night. God bless.
In my America, there is no left or right. We're all on common ground. Darkness gives way to light. In my America, you give more than you take. And when someone has lost their way, you lend them a hand and say, we are a family, together you and me, agreeing to disagree, but still live in harmony. The dream that gives hope to us is as strong as it ever was. United we stand, divided we fall. That's my America.
Your America and my America.
United we stand, divided